When you start creating videos, there's some sort of progression when it comes to video quality. Like at first you think that you have to upgrade your camera to get better quality, but then you eventually recognize that it's not that much better, so you start investing in better lenses, and there you already notice a big difference, but it's still not where you want it to be, so you eventually figure out that lighting is really important. But in some of your shots, you notice that there's still something missing. And that's the point where I've been for quite some time. I knew all the time that there's a tool out there which would really benefit my videos, but I've been sleeping on it. I just didn't get it, and that tool is a fog machine. So in this video I want to show you what fog machines can do for you, why they make your videos better, and how to use them. I'll also show you the fog machine that I use, but most of the stuff counts for all fog machines. So let's get into it. So let's get straight into why you should use a fog machine and how it makes your videos better. I would personally break it down into two use cases. There's at first creating atmosphere in your shots, and there is also adding certain effects. And what I mean with creating atmosphere is simply that you spread the fog equally in your room. Depends a little bit on how much fog you add. Like if you add a lot of fog, for example, that creates a rather vintage vibe, like if you would sit in an old building that's super dusty. And only adding a little bit of fog makes the effect less obvious, but it helps a bit to make your highlights and also shadows to a certain degree look smoother. That looks a bit more organic, so I personally prefer the look of fog over mist filters. But I must say I use them a lot together because you get this really nice glowing highlights, but you also get this nice volumetric fog effect then. But you can also use it to separate the background even more from your foreground. Let's say you have a foreground object and it's really close to your camera and you have a lot of fog going on in the background. You get a naturally smoother look in the background as in the foreground. You have the super sharp object in the foreground, but the background is pretty smooth then. And that is a great enhancement, especially if you already use a strong out of focus background, because it makes it even smoother, but not in the same way as the defocusing of your lens works. And aside from creating atmosphere and making the background look smoother, what it also does is something I never heard about before, and that's creating more volume. And that came in handy when we got this shot here. You can see that in the first one it doesn't look that good, but then 2 weeks later, when I finally got the fog machine and I figured out what it can do, we used that to create volume there. Like we sprayed the whole room, made it really dense, and then we got the same shot again. And there you can directly see the difference. The whole room appears to be orange now because we add volume to the light. So as you can see, just by spreading the fog equally in your room, you can already make your videos look a lot better. But that's not all. You can also use it to add certain effects, and the first one is making light rays visible. Now you also usually do that by spreading the fog relatively equal, but in my opinion that's more an effect because it makes it obvious that there's fog in the air. And maybe you asked yourself before, why do certain creators always have this effect? Are they just lucky that there is something in the air or so? Or is it that they added it on purpose? And I can tell you they most likely added it on purpose by using a fog machine. It just makes shots more interesting. And then there are the other two effects that I want to show you here, and they are more locally. Like you don't spread the fog equally in your room anymore. And that's at first that you use it to emulate natural fog. For example, I shot a sequence under a hot shower recently and I wanted to show that the shower is hot. So I used the fog machine there to also add steam to the shower sequence, and it instantly looked a lot more like it was a hot shower. But that's only one example. You could also use that if you want to emulate a fireplace, for example. Let's say you have your artificial light somewhere with a fire effect, and then you use your smoke machine to add that fog that would usually come from the fire, so it looks a bit like that. There's probably an infinite amount of other examples where you can emulate natural fog. And the other effect is a bit more special. That's the so-called dry ice effect, which you can't achieve with every fog machine out there. You need a special one for that, like the Smoke Ninja that I use. And this effect essentially creates really, really dense fog that stays in one place. And that makes it really interesting for product shots, in my opinion. Of course, you can also use it for food photography or so. But in my case, I just used it to get shots of a camera here. And I found that it looks so cool because you can get those shots while the fog is coming up. And that makes it look so special. But let's now also come to fog machines, different types of fog machines that you can use, and what I use here, the Smoke Ninja. So at first, there are those amateurish fog machines that are more used for partying and stuff. Like a friend of mine in Germany, for example, has one in his living room whenever we celebrate New Year or stuff like that. It's super cool, like techno music, disco lights, and all the fog in the living room. They're really cool. And you can also use those fog machines for filmmaking, just to spread it equally in your room and get all the effects that I mentioned before. So you mustn't spend a lot of money. These are usually somewhere around $50 or so. So just get a cheap one if you're on a budget. But if you want to get more effects and you also want to be a bit more portable, because those amateurish machines are usually quite big, you can get something like that here, the Smoke Ninja. You can directly notice how small that is compared to other fog machines. Of course, there are also professional fog machines that are bigger for big rooms. This is certainly not one that you would use for big rooms, but smaller rooms like I have here, this is perfectly fine, even if you want to distribute the fog equally everywhere in your room. But what separates those professional fog machines from amateurish ones is that you have certain options here. Like at first, a dry ice effect that I told you before, that's available here. Just press a button, get the fog, and you directly have the dry ice effect there. It's super easy. And it also has a steam effect, which is similar to fog. Like fog is essentially just blows out fog and you can quickly fill your room. And steam does pretty similar stuff, but a lot less. Like the amount of fog is less. So this is good if you want to have a constant flow of fog, but it shouldn't be too dense. Now, there's one concern maybe about this specific fog machine here, because it's so small. Maybe you think it cannot produce much fog, it doesn't last that long. And that's, I think, the big selling point of this Smoke Ninja fog machine here, because you see this is a 100 milliliter bottle of what it comes with. I've been using that now for about 2 months. Of course, not every day, but I probably had like 10 or 12, 13 shoots, something like that with it. And as you can see here, maybe it's still more than half full. So I barely used anything. And that's because it gives you up to 200 minutes of fog. I've been using, as mentioned before, most of the time in the fog mode. So I was spraying a lot of fog to always completely obliterate the rooms with fog. And I did not use much of that. So this lasts you a very, very long time. I think this makes this machine pretty much perfect for content creators. Like it's perfect for small rooms that we usually shoot in, get certain effects, and it's pretty mobile, so you can easily bring it around if you shoot somewhere else. If there would be one thing that I would like to improve, it's the battery life. I think the battery drains a little bit quickly, so in between shoots, you should always charge it via USB-C, luckily. It's good that I use a USB-C port. But yeah, that's pretty much my only concern about it. Aside from that, it also comes with a remote. Might have lost it. I didn't lose it, yay! You can just put the fog machine anywhere in your room, press a button, and it sprays, so you don't have to hold it in your hands all the time. And it also comes with a few attachments here, like you have that one for the dry ice effect. Then this is a standard attachment here, which I use all the time to just spray it around in my room. And there's also this C-shaped one here, which honestly I did not use so far. And you can also attach it magnetically here, like this is a magnetic mount, but you can also replace this mount with that one here, so you can mount it on a tripod. I think what they could add to it is a feature where you don't have to constantly press the button that fog comes outside, but that you just press it one time and fog comes until you press it a second time, because that's something that I found a bit annoying sometimes. And one thing to be aware of is that when you use it for the first time, you would have to refill that little chamber here on top with the liquid. And to do that, definitely watch their tutorial before, because if you don't, if you're someone like I am, you might do it wrong and it ends up in a mess. Luckily, I didn't break anything. So I can only say that if you're already on a level where your lighting, etc. is all good and you want to bring your videos to the next level, then smoke machines are definitely something that you should look into. If you're interested in that specific one here, the Smoke Ninja, I will leave a link to it in the description below. And if you want to know more tools that make shooting videos a bit better, then check out this video here in the corner and consider subscribing for upcoming videos. I see you there.